Okay guys, so today I got up and I decided that I need to work on the Luke Joly case some more. I had questions that I wanted answered, so early this morning I started watching every report that I could see, everybody else that's covered this case in the hopes that I would get a little tiny bit of information. And I've gotten quite a bit of information. I've had some questions answered that are important to this case. And why I'm so excited is because, as you guys know, I spoke to my insider, Lorraine, who's working on the McWilliams case with me, and she kind of dropped a bombshell on me the first time I talked to her, that she said, you know that Luke Joly kid, I had him in my cab the night he went missing, because nothing I had ever seen online or heard talked about mentioned him being seen after Shooter's Bar. Originally they said the last place he was seen was on CCTV camera downtown at Cecil's Bar, and then years later it was confirmed that he was up at Shooter's Bar and had received a ride from someone there. The last person who gave him the ride there actually became a suspect and was investigated. So when Lorraine told me that she had picked him up and given him a ride in the complete opposite direction downtown towards Lakeshore, over the big overpass where all the trains run underneath, to Lakeshore, and dropped him off there, I wanted to see if I could find anything on that, and I cannot find anything on that. So that has been reported to the police by Lorraine. That's not her real name, okay? So they would have her real name, and they should have this report. So is this something they're just holding close to their chest? It doesn't make sense to me. And I want to know if the investigator and Luke's family know this information. Or is this something that just fell through the cracks? Because she told us some important things about Luke that night. He didn't have his jacket on him. She drove him across town in the opposite direction from where everybody says that he was last seen. It was 2 a.m. in the morning, so hours after he had reportedly last been seen on camera at 11:54, so we know he was still alive then. He didn't have his coat, which means that when he left Cecil's the first time, he either dropped the coat off before he went to Shooter's or got a ride back with this person that became a subject of interest. Did he drop his coat off then? There was a snowstorm that night. It was minus 8 degrees Celsius. What was he doing out without a jacket on? Okay? Questions that have not been answered. But what Lorraine is telling us is that he was in a completely different part of town at 2 a.m. And I have a bunch of other questions that I've found some answers to, including two things that really stick out to me mentioned by the spirit box, okay? I know we've been questioning the information we get through the spirit box and voices on the water of the fish tank, but guys, they keep telling us things, okay? Hack Shack, in one of the videos I did 2 weeks ago, I asked if Luke had any pets, and the reply came through very faint. I'm getting a full shiver down my arms. Said, had a cat. Did you have any pets, Luke? If you did, can you say their name? I don't know about it. That would be proof. Well, lo and behold, I'm watching another video that somebody did covering this. I don't know where they got this information. It hasn't been confirmed yet by me. But they say, just in passing very quickly, that in 2011, Luke moved into his new apartment with his cat, Yoshi. That's something I can now follow up on, okay? Did he have a cat? Apparently, this other researcher found this information somewhere. And we know the cat's name. I didn't know any of this. The box told us that. The box also told me something else about he wants the light. Luke's dad, Rob, lights a candle for Luke each year on his birthday because of a reference that Luke used to make to his dad. Lots of light to you, Dad. Again, full shivers being sent through me right now, and when I first heard that on the video. So there's a couple of things there. I want to go over some of the other things that I found, guys, because this is important stuff, and this is like the most updated stuff that you can get here in 2025, and there may be more out there for me to find, okay? The two women that were charged with making false statements, I knew from Aunt Angie that the first one was Jackie Kelly, who was the mother of the girl that Luke came to town to see, Ashley. The second one, and I don't know the relationship that she had with Luke or to this case, but we have her name, and this is the one that got a 2-year jail sentence for telling police that he was buried in Temiskaming and sending them all down all these false trails, Danielle Leduc Michelle. Also, we know that Luke was out with 3 friends that night, Brent being one of them. I had assumed it was Ashley and her boyfriend, but in the last video I watched, In Thin Air, he says that the girls stayed behind at the apartment and the boys went out to drink. So I don't have the names of the other 2 boys that were there, but apparently there was 4 of them that tried to get into Cecil's and were turned away. Now, something else that I already knew from living here in North Bay that is fascinating that one other video pointed out is that Cecil's bar is on the right, the zoo is attached to it on the left. And this makes sense because I knew this from my days when I was a teenager going there. Cecil's was like the old-timer bar, more of a restaurant. It was slower paced. You could get in that side, go in that door to get into Cecil's, where outside of the zoo they would be charging a cover charge. But inside the building, it was an open walkway. So once you were inside, you could just go through. They never stamped our hands or gave us bracelets or anything here in this town. They just took your $5 at the door and you were in. And so people got smart to this and they started learning. Go in, and it wasn't actually Cecil's at the time when I was a teenager. It was Wilder's. Wilder's and the zoo. I actually met my wife there. Side story. But I found it interesting that they pointed out that that is why these kids went in the Cecil's side that night, was to avoid a cover charge at the zoo. There's some misleading information out there. Some of these channels and videos are reporting it as the Zoom. Z-O-O-M. It's not. It's the Zoo was the name of the bar beside Cecil's. Okay, other things that I have found. The actual OPP police statement said that Luke was turned away from Cecil's because of his level of intoxication. One of my questions was it because he just didn't have ID or was it because he was drunk? Now this is what they're saying here. That completely contradicts what Lorraine told us, that when he got in the cab, I had assumed that he was going to be fallen over drunk, because it was also confirmed through my research this morning that it was reported by the other people at this house that they were doing jello shots, playing beer pong, having a good time being teenagers before they went out to the bar that night. So there was quite a bit of drinking going on, and I just assumed that if he was there and they had already been to another bar where they got turned away, eventually he ends up at Shooter's bar, that he's going to be drunk. And this is what I asked Lorraine. When he got in the cab, was he intoxicated? She said he was not. That to her, he was not drunk at all. They had a conversation. He told her things about his family, about his braces. They had a full conversation, and she said he might have had a drink or two, but he was not intoxicated. Something else that I followed up on was the weather conditions that night, and that it was -8 March 4th when he disappeared, -24 the night before. Police released in their statement that there was a significant snowstorm the night of March 4th, 2011, the night he was apparently walking around town with no coat on, because Lorraine said he didn't have a coat on when he got in the cab. His mother, Luke's mother, retrieved his coat and his gray hoodie from the Sherbrooke apartment 3 days after his disappearance, and she said, this is weird to me, she said that the jacket and the hoodie both felt wet, felt damp. So now that doesn't make sense to me, because if you've got an outer jacket over a hoodie, unless he's running, then you would be getting sweaty. Maybe he ran up to the bar. I don't know. It seemed weird to me. It wasn't raining, it was cold. And if you're sweating in those temperatures, -8, and then he goes out without a jacket afterwards, hypothermia, guys, becomes a question, right? And if this kid didn't have his jacket or his hoodie, what did he have on? I can tell you guys right now, I'm wearing a hoodie right now. And if I were to go out in fall temperatures here, I'd have a jacket over top my hoodie, and underneath, I have a t-shirt. Because if you get hot, you just take off the hoodie, you've got a t-shirt on. I don't think Luke would have had another long sleeve shirt underneath his hoodie, but they recovered that hoodie and the jacket at the apartment. So these are just things to keep in mind. Okay, we're thinking like detectives here. I found out that Luke has a second sister. We knew about who I thought was Priscilla, but I believe her name is actually Priscilla. I-L-L-I-A, Priscilla. Sarah is a second sister. We knew that Luke played guitar. Well, Luke also played piano and was a songwriter. So, confirmed by the OPP in one of their follow-up videos, Luke was at Shooters and got a ride by at least one patron. That's what their report from 2019 stated. Now, if Lorraine's statement is correct, we know that he was still alive after he got that ride. Okay? Because she took him across town at 2. A couple other little small things that I did get here were the description of things that were not recovered because they would still be on Luke are dark jeans, either dark blue or black. So we know he was wearing jeans. His purple belt, which we already knew about. But black New Balance shoes with green stitching. Okay, I didn't know that. So that's a new piece of information. And here's one that I had a question. They said that his backpack was not found. Backpack was the word used by the investigator on the W5 series. But she'd also said his bag after that. So I was confused. Did he have 2 bags? Did he have a backpack? Lorraine said he did not have any bag when he got in the cab. No bag was recovered from the Sherbrooke apartment. But what they've described as his bag that night is a black laptop shoulder bag. Never recovered. Did he have a backpack as well? I don't know. It would seem that if you were going to go to town and spend the weekend, 80 kilometers from home, you'd need a change of clothes. And would a black laptop bag be your first choice to put spare clothes in? No, it wouldn't be mine. And Angie had thought she had heard a duffel bag was missing. I cannot find any information on that, but officially here it says black laptop shoulder bag. So again, these are some of the questions I need answered. I've got a couple of them here. Why did the friends not leave the bar with Luke when he got turned away at the door? That's a burning question that any sane person should have. Middle of winter, they've already been drinking, one guy doesn't get in, why aren't you following with him? Why did the friends not report Luke missing? Even Brent, who said that they were going to catch a bus the next day to go back to Temiskaming together, didn't report him missing. Brent also said that he'd been sending texts to Luke, and the mom got Luke's phone from the apartment, went home and charged it, and said that the only thing on there was a call to Luke's dad where Luke was trying to get himself a ride home from his dad. So it kind of contradicts 2 things that Brent said. There were no text messages on there, and that Luke was looking for a ride home from his dad, not taking a bus home with Brent. So, as I'm reading these things and going through these things, I discussed this case with my daughter, and my daughter brought up a good point. Now, this is 2011, but there is talk of drugs and weed and partying, and if Luke was going out to get some weed that night with his $20, as Lorraine suspects that's what he was doing, getting a cab ride across town with $20, was going to pick up some pot and go back and smoke it with his friends. Again, just what she thinks was going on, right? None of this has been proven. But my daughter asked the question, is it possible that Luke had a second phone? Was it ever checked what number Brent was texting or calling? Right? So maybe Brent's not lying. Maybe he was texting Luke, but it wasn't on the cell phone that they recovered from the apartment. Maybe he had a second phone. And then, of course, my final question is, why were Luke's jacket and hoodie damp 3 days after he went missing? So these are some of the things that I found so far, and I'm going to keep looking here because there's something else I want to look at right now, is that they found his bank card on the 500 block of Sherbrooke. And that's kind of in between where the house he was staying at and the bar that he got turned away from. So I'm trying to piece together with the new information that we have from Lorraine saying that she brought him across town the other way. When did he lose this bank card? Because if he was going back to the apartment from the Lakeshore side, would he have gone up that same street? I'm going to take a look at this, and I'm going to let you guys know what I find.
All right, I want to show you guys North Bay and the map here because this is the only way you can visualize where Luke went the night he disappeared. This red dot over here, 683, is the apartment on Sherbrooke Street, okay? Where Luke and his friends went from the apartment was down here. If we zoom in just a little bit, you can see. This is where the friends started drinking over here, 683 Sherbrooke. They would have walked down here, down Main Street, and come to Cecil's Brew House, okay? Right here, that's this building. And that's where they were rejected. It becomes a mystery from there where, whether Luke goes back to the apartment over here and leaves his coat, his jacket, his glasses, all of that stuff at that time, and then proceeds to another bar, or does he just leave Cecil's and go to the next bar? I think if you're out on a night when it's -8, there's a snowstorm, he's not going to leave here and go back to the apartment, drop off his stuff, and then go out drinking again. I think we have to suppose, common sense here, would be that he gets turned away at Cecil's, his friends stay drinking here, and he proceeds across town. We're going to go up to Shooter's Bar, guys, which is down here. You got to go down to Algonquin. Then you got to go up Algonquin to the top. And where is it? Voyageur Inn is on Delaware. Okay, we didn't go quite far enough. He's going to make his way from Main Street right here. Okay, where my mouse is circling, he's got to make his way all the way up Algonquin, up to the Voyageur Inn and Shooter's Bar. It's been verified that he was there. He socialized with multiple people, and then he received a ride from somebody, at least one patron, is what was reported by the OPP. Okay, so do we suppose that he leaves Main Street, walks back over to the apartment, and then goes all the way across town with no jacket, no glasses? No, I don't think so. Not on a cold night. So I'm going to say he leaves Cecil's and either walks or gets a ride. We don't know how he got there, but he gets up to the Voyageur Inn. Now, we know that he gets a ride from here. Nobody seems to know where he gets a ride to, but I can tell you where he gets a ride to because Lorraine told us. She picked him up back down here on Main Street. In fact, she told me that she turned left on Wild and picked him up on Main Street, which would be right back here. Wild and Main Street is back at Cecil's. So, and it kind of makes sense that he would have left Shooter's Bar, knowing that his friends were here drinking, and tried to be back here to meet them at closing time for the bar. Okay? Now, the story we got from Lorraine is that she was sent to pick up two people at this location to go out to Callender, which is back across town, right out of North Bay. You got to go down here. This is Callender, way down here. Okay, that's where Lorraine was going to take her ride. However, these guys lied to her when she pulled up and she saw the two guys standing there on Main Street. They said, yes, we're going to Callender, and they jumped in her cab. So Lorraine picks up her fare right here at the corner of Wild and Main Street, and it's these two unknown guys who told her that they were from Ottawa, and Luke. And she proceeds to drive them down Main Street. They asked if she would give this kid a ride because they were going that way anyway, and they were paying the fare, and she said, okay. So Luke gets in with them. She has this conversation with Luke. They drive all the way down Main Street. They go over the overpass, which is right here, until she gets to the 100 block of Lakeshore. Now, in her statement to us, Lorraine said near the McDonald's, and right here is McDonald's. So somewhere in this stretch right here, she let Luke out. Okay? And then she proceeded with her fare down Lakeshore thinking she was driving them to Calendar, and they yelled out, "Stop," as they were going past the Comfort Inn and the Best Western. And that's when she realized that they had lied to her, that it wasn't the fare that she was supposed to pick up. And they got out here, and Lorraine actually did an investigation, went back after, and asked her friend who was the manager at the Best Western, "Hey, were there two guys staying here from Ottawa?" And the friend looked it up and said, no, they weren't. So she then assumes that, when they saw this hotel, they yelled stop. But by the time she stopped, she was closer to the Best Western. They got out, and she believes that they were staying at the Comfort Inn. So that's what we know. The last sighting of Luke that morning was 2 o'clock, and it's down here where she dropped him off at McDonald's. So what I was trying to figure out is, now Luke's got to walk back, right? He's got to walk all the way back up Main Street over the overpass. That's like a 25-minute walk all the way back up here to Sherbrooke Street. So Luke's got to come back over the overpass right here. And when you do that, it dumps you down McIntyre Street. You can continue down Main, but Luke knew where he was going, and he's going up here to this 683 again. So he probably would have went down McIntyre Street. So what I was trying to figure out is, would he have continued all the way down to Sherbrooke Street and then up where they found his bank card? And yes, possibly he could have. He could have gone up Fisher Street and over, or he could have gone back up Sherbrooke. So that doesn't really tell us, did he lose his bank card after the fact at the very end of the night, or did he lose it earlier? But what I can say is, logically, he didn't leave Cecil's, walk back here, ditch his coat and all of that other stuff, and then continue to go to another bar across town. That doesn't make any sense. But it also doesn't make any sense how he ended up back at Main Street without a jacket, knowing that his jacket's here at the apartment. So we have to backtrack that thought a little bit too. So the only thing that makes sense here, guys, is that he got a ride from Shooters at the Voyageur Inn back to the apartment. And if somebody was giving you a ride back across town, why wouldn't you just say, take me back to the apartment? Now, was he hot? From being inside? I don't know. Partying, jumping around? We have to keep in mind that Lorraine said he was not drunk. She said he might have had a couple of drinks, but he wasn't drunk. So I guess, logically speaking, he would have brought his stuff back here, left the jacket, the backpack, and everything here. Because we know that when he gets picked up on Main Street, according to Lorraine, who said she had a great in-depth conversation with this kid who sat in the front of the cab right beside her, she said he didn't have a jacket, he didn't have a bag, he had $20 in his hand, and that was it. I asked her if he was wearing glasses, and she said no, he wasn't. And all of that stuff was found back at the apartment. But why, even if you got a ride back here, would you leave that stuff and go back out? Even if you were just going down to check on your friends at the bar, where were the friends? The bar was closing at 2. So if he got picked up at 2, why did they not run into each other? So that would say that under that assumption right there, guys, we can say that the friends were not back at the apartment before 2 o'clock. Because if he had gotten a ride back to the apartment and the friends were there, I guarantee you he would not have walked back down to Cecil's. He went back there because he was looking for his friends, because the last place he saw them was they got in that bar and left him in there drinking while he got turned away. So when you go back at the end of the night and you're waiting for the bar to close, where's he going to go? The last place he saw them. It makes sense in the context that if we think, hey, he leaves Shooter's bar and he says, let's go back to the apartment, assuming his friends are done drinking. He gets there. None of his friends are there. They're still gone. He then takes off his jacket, leaves it there, his hoodie, leaves it there, and decides to walk down to the bar. He's not going far, I guess, at that point, a 5-minute walk. This makes sense. He might, if he was hot enough, have said, I can do a 5-minute walk down to check on my friends, meet my friends when the bar closes. Okay, so he goes back down to Cecil's. Why he doesn't get in there again, or he's not on camera again, I don't know. But then he gets in the cab and goes from there. This is the story. If we believe what Lorraine is telling us, and I absolutely do, he was in the cab that night.
So when we look at the map and we talk through what Luke's movements were, there are some things that we could say common sense. Okay, so let's break it down one more time here. He's at Cecil's, he gets refused. Why would he go drop off his jacket over here? It's only a 5-minute walk to the apartment. But if he was going back to the apartment and going to go out again in the complete opposite direction across town, it doesn't make sense that he would go over to the apartment knowing his friends aren't there. He doesn't have any reason to go there unless he's done drinking for the night and wants to just call it a night. And he didn't do that. He's 20 years old. So I don't think he went to the apartment at that point in time. He went up to Shooters. He still had his jacket on, supposedly. I don't know. Did anybody that saw him up there, can they confirm whether he had his jacket or not? Okay, that would be something we need to get confirmed. But anyway, what we can say is that when he leaves Shooters and he comes back downtown, would he have gone to the apartment first or would he have gone to the bar first? It makes sense if he went to the apartment first because that's where his jacket and hoodie and everything ends up. He gets a ride from this last known patron back to the apartment. Now the police could confirm that. Does the guy say that's where he gave him a ride to? You know? Then Luke's stuff is left there. Nobody's at the apartment, so Luke says, hey, I know where they were. 2 hours ago, they were at Cecil's drinking. They're probably still there. It's only a 5-minute walk. He leaves the house without any of his stuff. He's just going down to meet them as the bar closes at 2. How he ends up in front of Cecil's but not on the camera again at 2 and then decides to get in Lorraine's cab with these other 2 guys. He was obviously standing there talking to these 2 guys, having a conversation with them. And he just gave up on the fact that he was going to meet his friends, changed his mind. Maybe, it's only speculation at this point. But Lorraine speculates that he was going across town down to Lakeshore to pick up pot. So, hey, did he have this thought? Great, I'm going to go pick up some pot, then I'll just meet them back at the apartment. Is that what happened? I don't know. But it kind of makes sense that that's how his stuff could have ended up at the apartment because she told us that he was out there, got in her cab, and didn't have a jacket. So it could be entirely possible that he's now across town in the other direction, that I cannot find anything online or any of these interviews that anybody seems to know that that's where he was. Does that change anything? Did he end up going back to the apartment and then something bad happened to him there? Could be, but it could also be that he never made it back to the apartment at that point. We just don't know. But it's important, and I think it's super important, Lorraine's version of what happened that night, because she is somebody who pays attention. And she very distinctly remembered the conversation they had, that he had braces. She didn't make this up. That kid was in the cab that night. And it could lead to figuring out at 2 o'clock in the morning where his movements were. Did he even make it back to the apartment?